Today's episode is brought to you by Baby Lock. March is National Quilting Month, and Baby Lock is celebrating with a special sweepstakes event. One quilter will win a special quilting prize package that includes a Baby Lock crescendo and 2 years of Sew Ed online classes. That's along with a variety of quilting-related goodies from the Queen of Quilting herself, Eleanor Burns, and the voice of quilting, Pat Sloan. It's a total value of more than $6,750. For more information and to enter, visit babylock.com during the entire month of March.
Hi, and welcome to Sewing with Threads, the monthly podcast by the staff of Threads magazine. I'm Threads editorial director Sarah McFarland, and I'm joined by staff members.
Hi, I'm Carol Frasia, senior technical editor.
Hi, I'm Janine Clegg, copy production editor.
And on the phone today, we have contributing editor Judith Neukam. Hi, Judy.
Hello, Sarah.
Welcome back, Judy. She's been on the podcast once before. It's always fun to talk to her. Judy has been involved with Threads for 20 years in various editorial roles. We currently work with Judy remotely. She's in Omaha, Nebraska, and we are in Newtown, Connecticut. Judy created the excellent Teach Yourself to Sew video series, which you can purchase on DVD or watch at threadsmagazine.com. She writes feature stories for Threads, helps us edit the magazine, and creates the How Did They Sew That department, which analyzes a technique from the vintage garment on the back cover in every issue. It's always fascinating to speak with Judy, and in this episode, we're going to talk with her about fabric, particularly fabric stash disasters, and ways to rescue, quote, ruined fabric. And we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back to talk with Judy.
Check out our new online forum called Conversational Threads. It's where you can discuss sewing and fiber arts. Feel free to post questions and share your experiences or expertise. You'll find support and guidance from the Threads community. Participation in the Conversational Threads forum is free. Just visit threadsmagazine.com and select Forum in the topic bar to join the conversation.
Okay, and we're back, and we're talking to contributing editor Judith Neukam, and we're talking about fabric stash disasters. And this occurred to me because I know at least two of the people talking here today have had really bad fabric losses. So, Judy, Carol mentioned to me that you've lost some fabric in the past. What happened?
Well, I've had several disasters. One was 12 feet of floodwater. I know that Carol also had a flood. Mine was mud in a fabric store, and that was an issue to take care of. It also involved a wedding dress that I was making for a lady, and we managed to save it all, but it was really an ordeal. Another one was a huge moth infestation where a Persian rug caught some moths, and they channeled up through plastic trunks of fabric and really had a good meal.
How
Must have lasted for months.
How did you handle that? How did you A, get rid of the moths, and B, what did you do with the fabric?
I got rid of the moths by trashing the rugs.
Mm-hmm.
They were just alive. And the fabric, that was the beginning of a very interesting study. I figured, well, and it was mostly wool, but it was other things too, some silks and various things. I learned that it's not a good idea to store your fabrics in plastic trunks. You think they're good, and they might be good to protect against water, but they're not airtight, and they make wonderful nesting places for insects.
They got in there anyways.
Can mold in them. There are a lot of problems with plastic, but I decided to experiment with my fabrics since they were a loss. I just started washing them with all kinds of weird methods, throwing ice into the wash water and boiling water. And what I discovered in that process was that just about any fabric is better after it's been washed, even wools and silks.
No matter what the water temperature is.
And I abused these.
Oh, yeah.
So they were very interesting. They were very different from what they had started out life as, but they were beautiful after they were washed.
Well, Judy, that was, as Sarah mentioned, I had a flood. Mine was not 12 feet, it was 3 feet, but it was backed up sewage. So it was sort of, they said sewage, it really wasn't too sewagey, but anyway, I got rid of most of my fabric after that, but there were some pieces that I didn't know what to do. And I remember calling you in tears, just so devastated by the disaster in my house and having to live with this grunginess down in the basement. And you said, well, you can't lose anything by taking it to the laundromat and putting it in on hot with a bunch of detergent and drying it. And I thought, okay, that's how I'm going to handle this sad situation. So I hauled these big, heavy bags full of wet stuff, and I just kind of grouped it by color. So all the dark and blue things went together and the red and pink things went together, and I just did these loads of wash and dried them really hot. And I really did come out with some really good pieces. And some stuff didn't change appreciably, but that was okay. And some just became really interesting. So it was worthwhile, and it kind of gave me something to do when I didn't know what else to do with myself. And, I felt like I was salvaging a little bit, and that was a little bit helpful, too.
Did you have to wear a hazmat suit for that
I did
project?
I did for the cleaning of the basement, yes. Oh. The people gave me one, and I went up and down the stairs a million times with that and spread everything out on the lawn where it got snowed on afterwards, and then it unsnowed. It really was bad. But you know what? At this point, that fabric is ready for anything. And some of it I ended up dry cleaning afterwards again, and then they steamed it and pressed it so it came out like more on grain and flatter. So it got quite a lot of treatment, but now it feels very usable. And of course, I haven't done anything with most of it.
But that's very trendy, the weathered or distressed look.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You've got it.
Some of it doesn't even look that way. I had, and I was going to ask you a little bit about this. Judy, you once bought for me a beautiful piece of sort of midnight blue and black wool boucle that I have intended to make a Chanel-style jacket from. And that was one of the things that had a problem. I didn't wash that one. I think I did sort of treat it very carefully and have it dry cleaned and everything. So it's kind of ready to sew. But I wanted to ask you what your thoughts are about using that fabric for something other than a classic Chanel-type jacket, which would be quilting it to a lining. Do you have other ways that you can use a fabric like that will maintain its characteristics, but will support it because it can be pulley or it can sort of snag and things?
I don't really remember that particular fabric, but one thing that I do remember doing along the way with boucle fabrics was unraveling them. And what I discovered, and in fact, I used to have a sample there at the office, was that a piece of Chanel fabric had 12 different styles of thread on the warp, and the warp was another different 12, and that's what gave you this frothy feeling weave. Mm-hmm. And some of them were silk, and some of them were cotton, and some of them were cellophane, and they were all different types of fabrics. So you have to determine first exactly what you're dealing with. Mm-hmm. If you've got something like cellophane in there, you don't want to mess with a lot of heat.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because it will melt. But if they're primarily natural fabrics, I would think, and you don't want to quilt them to anything, huh?
Well, I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it. I just thought, is there another way to do it? Only because to a certain degree, getting into the many, many hours that are involved in the quilting process for this jacket is probably holding me back from getting good use out of this fabric, if I'm being really honest about myself and my motivations. So I was trying to think, is there another way? Is there something else that's glorious you can do with it that isn't that?
What about a skirt, and if you used some kind of interfacing or just lining that was not quilted to it.
That I could. This one I should, I need to look at it again. I haven't gone and sort of patted this fabric for a little while, but it is, my sense is that it's mostly wool with a bit of mohair. It's rather fluffy and rather bulky, so it is not lending itself to a skirt for my particular figure challenges. I think it needs to be on the upper half of my body rather than the lower half.
I don't know, Carol. I was thinking about a skirt with a panel of the boucle
maybe.
on the front.
Maybe that's I could do that. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and some kind of black smoother thing on the sides, or
Yes.
coordinating. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Judy. What were you going to say?
You can machine quilt that,
I do know that. Yeah, yeah, and you think that's really the best way to handle this kind of fabric?
That's the way I'd handle it.
Okay.
And this channel quilting, this is essentially what they use in a Chanel-type jacket, but
Right.
you don't have to use that approach. You can go ahead and pre-quilt all of the fabric or not. It's quicker if you don't. If you quilt kind of broad cut the pieces and then
Right.
quilt them and then sew the jacket or top or whatever together. But it's very quick, really. If you just channel stitch by machine, you can do it in an evening for a jacket.
So you're bringing me right back to where I started. Okay.
All right.
Sorry, but
Someone will obviously have this question, and maybe
Yeah.
we should explain why you shouldn't use fusible interfacing in this instance. Even if you've decided that it does not have cellophane or another fiber that is susceptible to heat, not doing well under heat. Judy, what would you say to someone who says, I want to use fusible interfacing in this case?
I'd say you're going to have a big mess.
Yeah.
I really wouldn't do that, and that's unusual for me because I'm usually pretty daring, but I think that it would be lumpy and you wouldn't be able to get a good fuse, and it's very likely that you're going to end up with some parts of the fiber melting.
That's possibly true. And also just having recently, I was making a sample that involved fusing a slightly textured fabric, and I realized that another reason for not doing it is that in the process of fusing, you really flatten the texture, and it's almost impossible to bring it back up again after you've done that. And with something like this that's a natural fiber, maybe applying some steam and lightly fluffing it with your fingers or something, you might be able to bring it back, but you can always tell that it's kind of been crushed down.
That's right. And here's another little tip about fusing that I discovered a number of years ago. I had friends who had a trailer in Phoenix, and they would go to the trailer in the summertime and golf all summer. Or maybe I'm turning that around. They went during the wintertime while it was winter everywhere else. Anyway, they stored some of their clothing in this trailer when they left, and it was very hot there, and all of the fusing in their clothing melted. And it ruined everything they owned.
Yeah.
Was it stuff they had made, or was it ready to wear?
It was ready to
Ready
wear,
to wear
but
too, yeah.
things like suede clothes that had pressed-in interfacing and things, they all bubbled.
Yeah, I guess there's no rescuing that. No.
I mean, I think you can try pressing it and hope for the best, but if it's gone, it's gone.
Right.
I found any time that I've lost fabric to natural disaster, some kind of accident or some kind of creature. I had a mouse once who set up a very comfortable home in a box of fabric. That there's a period of mourning where I have to let go what I intended to do with that fabric in the original color and the original texture. But then this world of possibilities opens up. I mean, there's dyeing, there's felting, Judy, I wanted to ask you, how do you deal with holes? Sort of random holes. I have some ideas what I would
Like small
do.
ones, like moth holes you're thinking
Yeah,
about?
moth holes.
Like
Yeah.
just sort of distributed around randomly?
Yes, that's just
Yeah.
it. They are random. There'll be this sporadic grouping and then another spot. It's tough to just cut around them. I would love to figure out a way to sort of integrate them into garment design.
Have you, do you watch Pinterest at all?
I have a Pinterest account. I'm not on there often enough. I just, if I'm looking online and I see something that I like that I want to reference later, I just quickly pin it to a board. So I have like tops, jackets, shirts, sweaters. It's really, tied to things that I want to make.
I've met been introduced, I guess I should say, to some very interesting artists, and one that I like a lot is Jude Hill. And she does a lot of hand stitching with scraps of fabric, and she also has several podcasts that show how she does her work. She does fabulous painting with threads and fabrics. I mean, little squares that she works into things. It's mostly artwork that we never see finished in anything, but it's delightful, charming images. I would use something like that, just kind of sprouting out of the garment. A lot of times, washing and shrinking will shrink the holes out so that you can't even see them.
It's true.
I recently pulled out a coat that I had started a number of years ago and discovered that the moths or maybe silverfish had channeled through the nap on the coat, and I threw it out. I decided I didn't want to have this particular piece covered with artistic stitching or anything. You might be able to also insert other pieces of fabric into the design. It's certainly a challenge.
I think I was going to say, you said you can shrink it and sometimes make the holes disappear, but I also know from experience that sometimes when you wash something or whatever, the holes get more frayed and slightly larger. And if you could manage to do that in a controlled way, maybe you could, make the garment and then puncture it artistically and have that sort of frayed hole effect be an embellishment. I'm thinking not quite as shreddy and frayed as like those jeans that Kenneth King wears.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Janine, I'm sorry. We're going to have to put that in the show notes. I think we have a picture from wearing them. But slightly less than that. That could kind of be a fun way to do it if you wanted to do it. I think with knits sometimes, the hole will happen and it won't get any bigger. So you could do that artistically too.
You could also punch more holes into it and create a pattern of holes.
Yeah. Well, Judy, so you said you threw that coat away that had been eaten a bit. And one of my questions for you is going to be, where do you draw the line? When do you just decide, I've had it, I'm throwing away this piece of fabric or this garment? Is it just that you don't have a vision for it anymore?
This is a longer answer than the question probably deserves. I've recently had some deaths in my family, and I've discovered that a stash is a problem when you're left with someone else's stash. Mm-hmm. I've collected over the years many people who've decided not to sew anymore have given me their fabric, and as a result I have thousands of yards of fabric. And I realize now this is kind of a tricky situation, because what am I going to do with all of these things? If I start sewing today, I would never finish making something out of all of these yards. Yeah. So I think that you have to it's like choosing your battles. Mm-hmm. You have to decide, do I want to invest the time that it's going to take me to resolve some kind of a good solution with this, or do I just want to let it go? In this case, I had invested a lot of money in this coat. I mean, it had a wool fleece lining hand stitched in it. I bought yards of lace to trim it with. It was going to be a spectacular piece, and I was just heartbroken that it was channeled with little bug bites. But I didn't have the heart to continue with it. I think in your soul,
Yeah.
there are a lot of other things that I can use and make coats that I will love, and maybe I don't want to fight this battle.
Right. It's hard to come to that conclusion. I guess I always think, oh, could I use this for something else? Could I take a part of it?
That's true.
Part of it. And that's hard.
Years ago I was talking to Sandra Vetsina, and she doesn't have a stash of fabric.
Susan Kelgi had mentioned to me that she doesn't keep a big stash of fabric either. And
I'm so envious of them.
Doesn't it sound freeing? Oh, Judy, you know what the term is for having a big stash of fabric? It's SABLE, stash acquired beyond life expectancy.
That's it.
Yeah.
Well, and I've heard that he who dies with the most fabric wins. And I've also heard that you shouldn't call it a stash. You should call it a collection.
Yes.
It's true. It would be free. I feel it would be freeing. It would definitely be freeing in terms of space in my apartment if I didn't have as much fabric. But there's something to be said for being able to have an idea and immediately go to your stash and be able to find something that's appropriate so you could start working on that idea. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I've also heard, what Diane Erickson used to say, if you see a fabric that you just love and you have to have it in your life, buy a quarter of a yard.
And then admire that quarter of a yard, take it out from time to time, right?
Well,
find a way to use it.
And work it into something else that you're making.
Mm-hmm.
But don't, I've gone through different stages in my life. At one point I was buying 4 yards of everything. And then I was overbuying because it doesn't take me 4 yards to make anything. And so I was left with half of the amount. And, I cut down. At one point while I was on the staff at Threads, and we were, during that stage, I think we were going to 200 sewing shows a year. And I bought yardage at every one of those shows. And I finally said, no more. I can't buy any more fabric. So I started buying buttons. And now my button collection matches my fabric collection.
Oh, there you go.
Judy, I want to ask you about something you mentioned at the very beginning. How did you save the wedding dress from the mud?
That wedding dress was made out of silk organza and heavily embroidered with gold thread.
Wow.
And fortunately, it wasn't a gathered skirt and all of those things. It was very clean lines, and I washed it several times. The mud must have been kind of marbleized because everything in this sewing space, which was in a basement that had adjacent to the basement that was finished, there was a dirt floor basement that pulled up all of this dirt and threw it into the water that had burst through the wall down there. After washing it by hand several times, and then I pressed it between sheets of wax paper to put the body back in it and to help put a coating on it, and it worked.
Wow.
You have to soak and soften up that dirt, and in this case, because the embroidery that was in it, I didn't risk machine washing anything.
Sure.
But here again, it's a lost cause almost. Anything that you do may be risky, but you've already lost the garment. So you have to pull it out of the depths of ruin, I guess.
Did any of that hand washing shrink the garment at all or
No.
stretch it out in any way?
No, it didn't. I think that the silk organza, I think silk organza is a miracle fabric. It is so sturdy. It looks
It's
so
very
fragile.
hardy. Yeah.
But I think possibly the embroidery helped hold it into its normal shape, and just because it really, the only agitation that it got was in the blast of water that it got initially, and after that it was just patience.
Judy, did the bride know about the condition of her dress?
The bride did know. I mean, I had to tell her because she had been in for a fitting, and the dress was on a dress form in a lower level of this little sewing factory that I had, and she knew it was there. I didn't tell her how bad it was.
Got a little bit dirty.
How long did the process of saving the dress take? So, like, how long between when you told the bride something happened to your dress and then you were able to show it to her and it was rescued?
I think it was about a week, and that was really tight.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, good for you, Judy. Wow. Okay, so I have a question now about, you said you bought all this fabric and you have way more than you'll ever be able to sew in your lifetime, and now you also have this button collection. How are you storing all of these things now?
Oh, I have a miracle home, and it fits everything. I have a balcony in my house I think it's 36 feet long and 12 or 14 feet wide. And I've got huge, big shelves all along one wall that's filled with fabric.
Wow. So are these open shelves?
They're, years ago, I think I put something in Threads magazine about this. They're those big rolling racks that are about, 7 feet tall and 4 feet wide, maybe 8 feet tall, and each shelf has a square or rectangular bag that I've sewn out of all of this extra fabric that I've got. So the fabric is folded and covered with fabric. So it doesn't have any of the paper burning problems that it has. It doesn't have the issues with plastic and mildew and that. And they're tied into these metal rack shelves. So I can roll the racks around if I need to move them. Also, fabric is extremely heavy.
Yes,
I moved to Nebraska from Connecticut, and when the movers came and saw all the fabric that I had, they said, "Oh, well, it's just fabric. That's nothing." And I thought, little do you know.
Right.
I think that it weighs about a pound a yard.
And
I really do think that's how they figure on those things. So it's a good thing I have a sturdy balcony.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're able to see your collection easily.
I have it sorted by color. So then there are things like laces. I have bags of lace and bags of linen and bags of wool, but those are then sorted by color.
Oh, see, I do by season, cross-reference with fiber type.
Oh, see.
How about you, Carol?
I store by kind of fiber type and weave type. So the knits are separate and the wool is separate, and then the cotton and the sort of prints that are good for dresses and blouses are separate. Sort of, I think it might be garment type almost, maybe would be what mine is like. How about you, Janine?
Do a combination of color, and then, yes, and it depends on the fabric type also. And it's funny because I know a lot of people do store according to what garment type they anticipate making with the fabric, but I change my mind a lot. So.
I do too. I used to put these bags together with the pattern, the notions, the fabric, and I was like, I'm going to sew exactly this. And then 6 months later, I would want to make something completely different.
Right.
So I don't bother to do that.
I did that for about a year. And after that, it just got out of control, and I realized this was not helping me at all. I've moved a lot, and so the way that I store things has sort of changed over time. So now I have certain bins that I know I bought in Illinois, and mostly that stuff came from Vogue Fabrics or something, or sort of their Midwestern things. And the other day I thought, I know I have some beautiful boiled wool that I think I bought at Haberman's when it was still in Royal Oak. Where would that be? And I had to do this detective process to go back and say, well, I know I got that one from Vogue Fabrics in Evanston. So this other one is probably a Midwestern box too. And that's how I found it, not by
So
anything
geographically.
else. Yes, I know. And that will never help anyone, including me sometimes.
You know, they say the best way to store fabric is to hang it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that I've had fabric that's been ruined by folding it.
Yes, that was
And
going to be
say-
one of my questions. How do you get those wrinkles, those permanent marks out? They're permanent.
Yeah. If I have a project coming right up, like let's say it's something for work, I know I'm going to have to sew this dress like in the next 2 weeks. I will iron the fabric and then hang it by the selvage on a skirt hanger, on a clip hanger.
Yeah.
And I don't have a lot of closet room to do that, but it's so nice. The fabric just, stays perfectly ironed.
That is nice. I know Kenneth, I think, sends all of his fabrics out to be professionally pressed.
Yes.
I think that's true, yeah.
I think he does that, yeah.
And he works with a lot of high-end fabric too. But for those of us who work with some lower-end fabrics, it's a bit of a challenge to get those wrinkles out. A lot of steam works.
The thing that I think is really important is if you are using a washable fabric, wash it the minute you get home from the store. Just wash it and use. I've found Tide makes a soap that is relatively new. I think it's called Pure, P-U-R.
Yes.
Pure Clean, I think is what it is. Have you used it?
I've used that. I'm always experimenting with whatever they put out that is, sands, fragrances, because I have allergies. And so I think that there's one that I frequently use, Free and Clear. There's another one that Woolite puts out that's also, it's supposed to be allergy proof. I've tried different detergents. Oh, what's the detergent for infants' clothing? Dreft, yes. I've tried Dreft. Yeah.
I'll tell you, I love that Pure because it really makes clothes clean. And I checked it actually just yesterday to see again what the contents and what it had or didn't have. And it doesn't have chlorine, and it doesn't have, it keeps a nice pure pH. It doesn't have traditional detergents in it. All of those things can cause allergic reactions, and they can also deteriorate your fabric.
Oh, thank you. That's a good tip. I'll have to use that one.
And sometimes I will use dish detergents on things. I think about them scrubbing the little ducks that have been in the oil fills and things, and I think if it's good enough for a duck, it's good enough for my fabric. But a lot of dish soaps have bleaches in them.
Yes.
And they will, over time, destroy fabric.
How do you feel about shampoo for, silk or wool?
I love shampoo.
I like shampoo And I like a little bit of hair conditioner sometimes
Yeah, at the end
for
of it.
wool. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about using shampoo in the, what is it, HE washing machine.
Oh, yeah.
I only use it for hand washing, I think, because I feel like it can be extremely bubbly.
Yeah. I also use Color Grabber.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
The sheet, the little sheet thing
Yeah.
you throw in? Yes, yeah, I've used those.
And since I've retired, I've become more of a quilter, and quilters all say before you ever do anything or piece a quilt, run it through a washing machine with Color Grabber so that your colors don't all fade or bleed on
or
you
bleed
yeah.
onto other ones. Yeah.
after you've.
There's a beautiful quilt on display for a few years here at Taunton, and some of the red has bled into neighboring white areas.
I didn't notice that. I'll
that's
look at
so
it.
sad.
Yeah, it's down the hallway.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, Judy, it's been so much fun talking to you, but we have to end this episode. We're running out of time. So we're going to talk to you again soon. Of course, we'll be working on the next issue with you. And thank you for the tip about the pure detergent and about that designer that you came across, Jude Hill. Yeah, that sounds like a definite possibility. Yeah. Thank you for listening. Follow Threads on social media and visit threadsmagazine.com to view show notes for this episode. While you're on the site, check out Threads Insider, our online membership with exclusive access to expert sewing techniques. Until next time, keep on sewing with Threads.